Okay, so here we are after a while. Alex, Damjan, and myself continuing design of our CD product. In this episode, Damjan prepared quite a lot of various technical diagrams and options, and that we should go through. So yeah, Damjan, please.
Okay, let me share my screen. Yeah, sure. So mainly this is the high-level architecture that I decided on in the end. I considered various approaches, but I think the others are not even worth it discussing. So maybe I can just go briefly through this, and then we can go into more details. So the main point here is to focus on that those events as we discussed the previous time. So we would have something as event bus in the middle called Rabbit or Kafka or something like that. And then essentially everything that comes from the outside world, webhooks from GitHub or S3 or something like that, would basically be processed into internal format and then dumped into that event bus. And after that, we can subscribe to those events and continue processing them. The other approaches I considered was leaning more into Elixir and going with processes and messaging in between processes. But the main issue there is everything is in memory. We don't have Rabbit Kafka gives more guarantees for the messages than messaging between processes in Elixir. And we would also need to have node clusters of 4 Erlang nodes to have that scalable, so that wouldn't work.
Yeah, lack of
easily.
persistence would.
Yeah. So that was another approach, and the last thing would be to rely on some database, but there are many other issues there because we would have to periodically scan database for stuff, and that is probably not the best solution. It would be very really intensive on the resource side. We would need strong database instance for that. So in the end, I ended up with this approach. I think it would probably be the most stable one. And also there is added benefit of we have quite a lot of experience with a lot of these components in a similar manner, so it would speed up development as well. So some of the main components here, I can briefly go through this. So we have this on this diagram, it's just one receiver, but it would be maybe multiple of them, yeah, for different endpoints. And we could also work with webhooks or with some pub subs or various other things, right? And then event from the receiver would go 2 places. One is so GitHub. Let's say GitHub webhook comes in here. We read it, and then there is the component that should be easy to extend, so we can so even other outside contributors could add their own processors for those outside sources, let's say. So if someone wants to add support for some specific flavor of Git or whatever, right, it should be easy to just essentially write one file that basically maps the fields from this webhook into the fields that we need for our inside processing thing. And that's essentially the main functionality of this point is they take the information from the outside world and create internal event from them, something similar to those CD events, but with a bit more data, and then publish it to Rabbit. This point, here we could do both Rabbit or Kafka. Kafka is maybe more popular in these days, but we have more experience with Rabbit, so that is still up for us to decide. But yeah, and the second point here would be to also I draw here like one component called ledger that would essentially record those events in database for us. That would then allow us to things like if in case something breaks, we could breaks out here, we could re-emit events from certain point in time, or this component could also like emit those events outside, like webhooks, if someone wants to create their own integration with this system, right? So that would be that point. Then from there we have like these event processors. Again, so I didn't draw it here. So okay, we will go back to this. So for now, this event processor gets the event from here, and then based on like this event goes through available stages that could connect to it. So let's say like this is some web from GitHub, right? But it is for a certain organization, so only stages from that organizations are considered, and then we see if any of them is actually listening for Git events, and if it is, then we like pass it down to this like state condition checker to actually figure out whether this stage should start or not. And then in this component, essentially we evaluate those conditions that are for stage execution. So I wrote down it here. So the conditions are basically could be divided roughly in two main categories. One is something that would require some kind of job to evaluate or execute some code to figure out stuff. So that would be like our changing conditions. So like whether there was a change in particular filing inside the repository, or some kind of parameters to expressions, runtime parameters, or some kind of script execution. We could also allow that. So let's say you want to run some serverless code or whatever, or check with some system outside, like whether, okay, are you available to deploy at this point, or to ingest deployment at this time. So that would be one category, and the other category is the stuff that can be executed without, like, it's not on the server side. So like time windows, we could check like whether the current time is inside the time window, then manual approvals, then like whether like specific version or was passed on stage X, whether this version was on stage X deployed like X days ago, then like whether this stage is cordoned, uncordoned, and then like various other stuff like this, like source properties. So that would be like, for example, whether the branch is master if we are talking about Git hook with some commit, right? And then like this stage will also like handle that manual approvals. And then let's say all the conditions are done. Then we can start the stage execution. So we would have this stage execution management system. So it would be like state machine system. So something similar that we are currently doing for pipelines, and then that is like, yeah, pretty familiar to us. So essentially this thing would start a pipeline or a job or something else, whatever we decide that can be encapsulated inside the stage. So for now, we know that we want Semaphore pipelines, and I think it was Argo CD jobs, but yeah, we can add more.
Yeah, I think
yeah, GitHub Actions and so on. So that part should also be written in a sense that it is easy to expand as easy as possible, right, with outside contribution. And then so this thing should start that, and then essentially check when it is done. So for figuring out when the pipeline or the job is done, we again like we would utilize like two systems. So most of the fastest system is this with once the pipeline is done, some webhook is emitted, we go back to this receiver, it emits event, and then event processor goes to this and says it's done. This loop is much faster because we figure out as soon as this is done, the webhook is emitted, and then it's just several. So there is no significant processing on this side. It's just pass, and this figures out. The other thing that we can also do is if something doesn't support webhooks, or if there is an issue with webhook, we should have the polling mechanism to verify that, check periodically if the pipeline or job is already also still running, or if it's done. But that should be with very with very big delay in between checks. So right now, let's say a minute or something, so we don't hog too many resources or essentially get blocked by the system if we ask a million times in a second. So there is that, and then also there is this version manager thing. Essentially, there if this thing produces some version, it would pass that information to this version manager, or once the version comes to stage and then the stage passes, we should also update the version here to say stage passed or version passed on stage X, right? And then this version manager would allow us to have that version times stage matrix that we discussed last time. And yeah, so there are various other things I noted down here. There is also that one thing I'm not sure if we discussed that last time or not. There's that question of how let's say this pipeline or this Argo job produces some artifact. How would we know about that in our stage execution or our system? So essentially, there are two approaches here. One is this thing uploads somewhere, and then we read from that place where this uploads. But that approach is not the best because we would need credentials to read files from, let's say, S3 or something. The other approach is this, where we essentially create an API point where from inside the job you could call something like CLI action to hit that API with, let's say, semcd record, and then the ID that we pass to this as a parameter on startup, and then a key value, let's say artifact URL equals something, or whatever as ID of equals that, and so on. And that approach would be probably better because we control everything from here, and I think people wouldn't have to create any credentials or something like that. We could essentially pass from here the ID and some token generated just for this execution, so you can upload stuff from it back. Yeah, I think that mostly covers it. There's also a few other boxes that are not in this processing thing. So there is one box that serves the UI, right, that reads from databases from here and from these stage executions. Yeah.
I think it's all clear and nicely broken down. I mean, the first question that pops into my head is, it's clearly represented if it's something outside coming in. But what about listening to the finished stages? So this...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I need one more line from this to this, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's straight away.
That would also probably go to the ledger, but...
Yes. Yeah, it would be a
It's
bit
maybe some
massive.
special kind of like internal receiver, which is
Yeah, it could go there, but or we could skip it and like publish the direct event from here and like.
yeah.
Or what would probably like happen is like we would call from here, like let's say gRPC to ledger, publish this, and then it would store in database and publish event. That is also an option. Just yeah. So essentially everything would be based on like these events, and there are three kinds of events. So one is that outside event. Then we have this like stage done. Those are inside events, and there is this where like specific execution is finished. That is something in between, but yeah.
Clear. In terms of open questions, do we have some kind of top list?
So the main question is like if we start implementing something here soon, there are like various things that we could like reuse from existing stuff. So mostly in this point and here, let's say.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of technology choices, I guess Postgres goes without question. I mean, with our good friends listening, I think that still choice between Rabbit and Kafka. I mean, to me, it's like pretty obvious that it's Rabbit.
Yeah.
Because Rabbit is lightweight. We have experience with that. Kafka brings a lot more, but I think it's deployment and maintenance of that is completely different level. Maybe that layer can be implemented in such a way that if in some circumstances you want to switch that out, and that messaging mechanism is going to be, I don't know, something else, it could be done, so it's not too tight.
Yeah, I think we should do that, like make it, there is not a lot of places where we consume this directly, especially like if this line goes here, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah, if this line goes here and then we go like this, then like we would only need to change these two places and let's say this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it should be easily swappable. The other thing is like gRPC communication in between services. That is like something we're used to, and it's like pretty good standard. It allows you to essentially develop client and server independently, as long as you have protocol defined or interface defined.
I mean, there is a question: is this is everything in the picture in the same service, or we have multiple services? And then I guess that there is a question: in which language is it implemented? I don't know. I guess. I mean, it is to some extent a question. I don't know.
Yes, from like we have most experience with Elixir and Go, so I would maybe limit to one of those two. We could do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would take us. Yeah. For a lot of these like things that are running inside the class, like backend services, Elixir is pretty good choice. Go is as well, because it would like it's maybe a bit less resource intensive. So yeah, it's maybe open question as well.
Yeah, we don't need to make decision right now, but yeah.
Oh,
Go would allow for much more, I mean, since this will be like a source available component, it would allow for more contributions in the Go world, but
yeah, that is definitely a bonus.
yeah.
The other thing is like some of these components we already have implemented, like similar components we already have implemented in Elixir, so there's that as well. So it's I think the main question is like speed versus like availability for contributions from outside world.
Yeah.
There's also a question like we could like implement, let's say, like this part and some of these in Go. So like those are the places where you mainly would want contributions. So like if you wanted to hook in something else, let's say, and any other execution thing here, Jenkins, for example, yeah, build kite or anything else like that we don't have at the moment.
Yeah.
So those would be also the questions, and yeah, I'm not sure any other things are maybe open here. Like the only open questions here are like in that area of like MVP and where do we stop with that. I think like the fastest turnaround would be if like we focus on Semaphore pipeline both here and here, and then like
I think those are good. I mean, I would definitely start with those in that area.
So what would be the functionality of the MVP? What would you be able to do as a user?
Well, you can hook in, you can make the CD pipeline, and it can be connected to a number of projects that you are either going to create new or you already have. And you would be able to trigger those pipelines in those, let's call it external projects, follow their status, and based on the results, something new would be able to start.
Will there be some of those resources, artifacts, or whatever as a part of that?
I mean, I see that it's somewhat it's a key system, but it's also a component which is Damjan kind of to some extent separate.
You mean this part about version managing, right?
Yes.
But versions is one and artifacts is another. I mean, depending how we connect them.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, there needs to be a message when the stage is done, and there also needs to be a message which is kicking off the stage. So those are the inputs and outputs. So I think that some kind of event specification, either it's somewhat like a more abstract event, or it's the version event, we would have to create.
And
one of those two.
For what? For like integration with other stuff, or?
I mean, let's say one stage is done and another stage needs to start. I mean, this next stage should know something about the previous stage. Point being, there is a message which is carrying, some data points, and then it's just about adding more or less.
It's this part, right?
Yeah. So it can carry additional key value or a set of key values.
Yeah.
I mean, but it maybe connects to that realm of like what are the next things that we want to define. I think that we are happy with this as a high-level architecture, and some of the things. So we could start from various, points, but we could define public HTTP API. It would give us another perspective. Is it a must to be developed straight away? No, but for interacting the system, because interaction will be primarily through API, not through UI. Initially, we need it.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
there is the DSL for specifying conditions. And through that will come the format of the message, of the messages that are flowing in between. So there are those three things that are kind of, we need to type down.
Specification for yeah. We can maybe start typing here something. So it's like this. Yeah. So we would need CRUD for creating stages. For stages, right?
I mean, for managing those receivers or listeners or whatever, how we call them in the front. If you want to subscribe to...
Yeah. There's also that question that we touched upon at the end of like last meeting or the one before. I'm not sure. Like, is that board with stages? Is that like one project and then we have many of them, or is there like only one board, and so all your stages live in same namespace, let's say, but you can like restrict views and like see like with labels or something like that, see just a subset of stages.
I mean, for the sake of simplicity, I was thinking about the names, the only one, but I'm not too much. Like workspace was one. I mean, we have a workflow already, which ties many pipelines together. This could be a workspace, can be any anything else, but I would initially tie all the stages to that single like entity, which is holding all of these things together. Why simplicity one initially? I think that it would be harder, and I don't think that we have like super good use cases for some other approaches.
Okay, and could you have then like more of those workspaces?
Yes.
Okay, so then we need.
And then workspaces have stages, and they might have those receivers, listeners. I don't know. Do they have any other high-level entity actually?
Let's actually draw that one down. I should have drawn it. Let's. Nothing else. Like we need like there are stage executions. We need stages, but those you don't actually like create. You can just essentially just describe and list. So.
But maybe then you can write down also CRUD for stage executions or stage runs, however you want to call them.
But the question is like, do you actually run a stage manually at any point?
No.
Right.
So yeah.
And you probably it should be immutable, so you cannot delete it actually. Like
Yeah, you're right.
Also, like the stage here, I'm not sure if it should be deleted. Archived, not deleted.
Yeah, because when we say CRUD, we mainly API for managing the resource.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are. It will be just read, but yeah. Stage runs, however we end up calling them.
Yeah.
And there is also the question of this like manual approval, whether we like create API for that or not, but eventually it will have UI action. But
Yeah, I think we must have API. I don't know if that should be connected to something with also a webhook. I mean, because there becomes a moment when that is required. So you can either poll and read, are there any approvals pending, needed? So you can approve it. Or someone can hit you with a hook, hey, I need approval. Point being notification system, Humans need to interact with that. And human needs to get the notification and they need to act on it. And the question is, how do they get to realizing that the notification is?
there is also like notification system for like all stuff here, right? Like we could like
we could hook into that
into this, yeah,
yes.
into Ledger and
yeah. So you can potentially rename that Rabbit Kafka to message bus. And then it would be the same abstraction level.
yes. Yeah.
Eventually, it can be API because once there is a UI needs to be populated by reading the API. I mean, there is that message format which is flying in between. If do we want to base it on cloud events? I mean, just a message format, but that's an open question. That's a technology stack question. So spec for message, and I think spec for those conditions. Those are the two other big components.
For these conditions, like one point, like it would be nice if it would be something similar to what we already have for when in pipelines, like if we extend that logic to some degree. But it's questionable whether there is something better.
I mean, it should not be that, only if we find something better. And I don't think that we will find something significantly better.
But like yeah, we do need like all Boolean logic and or not and stuff like that, and we need match like exact matching and regex matching. So that's a must. Like only like the keywords might be different. So like there we have like branch equals something, or like maybe here we don't want to have branch. Maybe we want to have source dot branch equals.
To like only alternative to what we have right now. I mean, if it's going to be some YAML-like interface, it really doesn't matter. It's going to be a set of conditions that are connected. It's only a question: do you write them as a list, which is connected with ends, or it's like a single, potentially huge expression? But it's more of like cosmetics. The only other thing that comes to mind, but I have no clue if it's a contender for this. A lot of these various, templating engines for, web and generally, seems to me have adopted parts of that Go expression syntax. I think you have those pipes, and there are some transformations that you can do on text. There is to upper, to lower.
Yeah, there's a bunch of functions. Yeah.
Yeah, functions, and that can be extended somehow. I don't know to which extent they have that Boolean expression thing. I think they do, but that's the only other thing that maybe we should take a look at. If it's more of an industry standard than R1, but again, I have
we
capable of supporting what we need.
We have support for that partially in Van now for parameters. You can use all of those to upper to lower. And so. Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely so. You just write like this here. So
if they have wrote a parser, an evaluation engine for that, and we just have to supply the values, and it's going to calculate for us the final result, then it's we get something for free. But I don't know how would change in work. If for the change in you literally have to do something, which is a call to a third-party function and over the network, whatever.
Yeah, I think the main thing here is for this DSL, these parts are pretty standard. We will end up with so if you want support for both, there is not a lot of amount of ways how you can do that, right?
Yeah.
Then so the only two questionable things are those outside functions that we provide, so change in and stuff like that, and the other would be the values. How do you specify if you want to read some value that is available? So let's say the result of previous stage, or I don't know, some parameter that was incoming.
Something, read some object.
Yes. So read a specific value from the set of values that is available to you. So that is the only part where it's specific to us and how we want to do we want to do I don't know
And that's important because usability there is important because
so do we want to have stage and then I don't know prod deploy, let's say that's the name.
Yeah, and dot some attribute of that eventually.
Yeah, and that dot result equals pass and so on. Do we want these at all brackets? Do we skip those?
Yeah, those are usually some maps. And accessing a map is either through that various things. Yeah, that's an open question.
Yes.
And those external.
Yeah, and then we have that.
With those external functions, one of the big things is if you can implement any function, but then that function needs to make a network call and wait for something to get you something back, then hold that expression evaluation line. Engine needs to have timeouts and potentially retry. Okay, retry, we can deal with the retry, but
yeah. Well, currently in Van we have a kind of a way for you to let's say hook up some function here, and then we could develop something like exec where you would pass bash script, Python script, or whatever, right? And we would provide your function data in specific formats, or it would be all in environment variables, so you can read them, right? And we would expect you to finish with on 0 or 1 to signal. Yeah. So that's also maybe let's do as exec bash So I think this part is probably like the most problematic, but yeah.
If you are listening to multiple previous stages, you need to wait to identify them. That's where the game of IDs come back into the game. I mean, I don't know at some point, but I think that we were speaking about that if the stage has a display name, which is like any string, whatever you want, including emojis, and then the stage, we would need to generate some ID. So maybe it has UID, but that's for the internal, bookkeeping, purposes. And then if you want to have ID, which is maybe that ASCII only characters plus numbers and dashes, that kind of name is very interesting for this referencing these messages, conditional logic, because you have something nice that you can say. So
yeah,
deploy stage dot this artifact, this value, this version.
Yeah. There is like, I think here it should be something like human readable. So it probably UID shouldn't be used here.
Okay.
And then it's the question like whether we use that like display name with emojis and everything else. It's like maybe a bit longer, but right then we only have to manage
that
one.
one is prone to changing. Someone wants to describe something better, and that other ID for referencing purposes, I think that should be set in stone. Because if you come in and change your ID of your stage, you're going to break all the people that depend on you. They're not going to know how to reference you anymore.
Yeah,
Unless
that's true.
Yeah.
But then like we would then it could be end here like you have stage 54, let's say.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It's a bit better than UID, but I'm not sure it's
No. I think it should be like you can give it a name. It's just that maybe the name is immutable. You cannot change it later, and you cannot add like emoji and
yeah.
crazy language character. Sorry, crazy language.
Yeah. It's just that like if you then decide that that first name that you given is not like the function of the stage changes or something like that, then well, what to do?
Right? There's some. That's why the display name. Okay, change display name to whatever.
Yeah.
But you would have to live with the ID. It's mainly because other people are subscribing to you. You're not triggering other people, and then.
Yeah.
But these things that are on the list here are going to actually trigger like 1,000 questions, because each entity would need to be specified. What are the attributes and values, and how was the life cycle? And then same for conditions and messages. So
yeah, but I think for that one it might be better to like switch to a GitHub repo and like pull requests, and then like
let's do that.
maybe I can do that as the next step here. So define the specification for these things.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you have experience with that. How it's called, Open API. I don't know if it's worth diving into that straight away. Probably.
Yeah. I would do that definitely for these API specs at least.
Yeah.
For this like DSL and events format, probably not, but yeah. Okay.
So next deliverable is this API spec.
Yes. And do we want, so that would probably be the first step into actual implementation, because after that we can start working on like services for this.
Okay, then maybe you let us know when we are ready for the next session.
Okay. So we there are some like operational questions there, like do we create a new repository, do we have something existing, and
We can discuss that async on Slack. Maybe.
okay, sure.
Okay. Okay, great. We are moving fast. Thank you, guys. See you.
See you.